After a long sea voyage, the orphans Mary and Tom arrive in the big city of New York. While they wait for their uncle and watch the Statue of Liberty being built, Mary comes across a little dog and shares her food with him, naming him Spark. Minutes pass and the orphans can't find their uncle anywhere, and when they remember that the letter they received from him had an address, they decide to follow it, since they need the man's signature in less than 2 weeks. The young people try to buy a train ticket, but discover they cannot use their Irish money, since New York only accepts US dollars. Realizing they'll have to improvise a way to make money, Tom starts playing his violin, while Mary carries the luggage of older passengers, receiving tips for her help. The problem is that this amount still isn't enough for the ticket, and the siblings are starting to lose hope when the girl spots a group of children walking toward the train. Quickly, Mary alerts Tom to the group, and the pair decides to blend into the crowd, allowing them to pass through the gate. After a few minutes, everyone manages to settle into their seats, and realizing that the siblings have nowhere to sit, a pair of girls decides to give up their seats. This gesture leaves the orphans grateful, and as they rest on the bench, Mary comes across Nick, a boy with paralysis who is part of the group. At that moment, the little dog starts barking, catching the counselor's attention, who approaches to talk to the siblings. Without thinking twice, Mary reveals that they are looking for their uncle, since their grandmother sent them to live with him. The woman then introduces herself as Eleanor and reveals that not only they, but all the other children on that train are orphans, who are leaving to meet their new families. Upon hearing this, Mary reveals that they, too, are leaving for a new life with her uncle, and wanting to help them, the woman asks them to make themselves at home during the trip and to call her if they need anything. The two then enjoy their trip, and a few hours later, at dawn, Tom wakes up and sees that Mary is gone. Confused, the boy looks for his sister, who is playing with the other orphans in the train car. However, when they come across one of the staff members, the girls band together to delay him, while Mary hides with Tom in the luggage compartment. Thanks to this, the man doesn't find the siblings, and the children celebrate, since they'll be able to continue their journey. Now that things have calmed down, Tom sits down to rest a bit, and Mary goes to talk to Nick, asking why he can't move. At the same time, Eleanor approaches the two and explains that the boy was born with that condition, but it doesn't prevent him from communicating with his eyes. At that moment, Tom hears the train's horn sounding and decides to walk to the first car to take in the view of the city they're approaching. On the way, the boy ends up bumping into a mysterious man, who drops his gun on the floor and quickly picks it up, getting annoyed by the situation. Soon after, Tom reaches the engineer's car, where Spark jumps out to try to catch a pigeon. Desperate, the boy tries to stop the little dog from falling off the train, and upon spotting a lost child in the coal compartment, the engineers rescue the boy and ask where he got that beret. Tom replies that he received it as a gift from his father, who was an engineer in Ireland, and the men are happy to be with the son of a coworker. The next morning, the train arrives at the designated station, and after saying goodbye to one another, the orphans go off with their new families. However, when introduced to the couple who had adopted him, Nick ends up being rejected, as the family does not want a child with paralysis. This situation leaves the boy completely devastated, and Eleanor takes him back to the train, where Mary holds her friend's hand to comfort him. Before the locomotive can depart, a mysterious man enters the scene and speaks with the old man, who reveals that the railroad has no security measures whatsoever. At that moment, it is revealed that the men are planning to rob the train and even have weapons hidden in a fake suitcase. Later, Mary plays cards with Nick to cheer him up, and Spark helps the boy choose which card to play. During the game, Eleanor appears, saying it's time for them to go to sleep, and Mary reunites with her brother, but just then, the employee appears in the car once again. Quickly, the pair hides on top of the train, but while they wait for the man to leave, Spark slips out of Mary's grasp. In a panic, the girl runs to rescue the little dog and is held back by her brother, who prevents the trio from taking a nasty fall. Sometime later, the locomotive makes a stop to refuel, and noticing that Nick is watching the buffalo outside, Mary has the idea of taking him to meet the animals. Although reluctant, Tom understands that this would make the boy happy and agrees to the idea. When the animal sees the young people watching him, he calmly approaches them, and Mary gets excited when she notices that Nick seems to be moving his fingers. So, the girl helps her friend raise his arm, allowing the boy to stroke the buffalo's head, which seems to accept him calmly. However, during the interaction, the trio hears the train starting up to leave, and they run desperately to board, but without success. This unexpected turn of events leaves the group in despair, but Tom tries to stay calm, and after telling Nick not to feel guilty about what happened, he thinks of a way for them to get out of there. At the same time, one of the girls on the train notices Mary's disappearance and tries to alert Eleanor, but the woman asks her to go back to sleep, as she is busy at the moment. Although she knows how urgent the situation is, the girl has no choice but to return to her seat. Meanwhile, Mary sets up some parasols for Nick and Tom, while the young man repairs a locomotive platform so they can reach the train. With everything ready, the group begins their journey in search of the locomotive, where Eleanor realizes that the trio of orphans has disappeared. Confused, the woman goes to talk to Sarah, who tells her that Mary went down to see the buffaloes with Tom and Mary, and the train left without them. Desperate, Eleanor alerts her companion from the orphanage to what has happened, but before they can act, the train is attacked by a group of bandits. Hours pass, and the trio continues their journey with the little dog when they come across a car off the tracks. Excited, believing their train had stopped to wait for them, the young people approach the car, but upon doing so, they realize it's a section that's been abandoned by the rest of the locomotive. Realizing the extent of the destruction in the cabin, Tom asks Mary and Nick to wait on the platform, and upon investigating the site, he manages to find most of their belongings, as well as an arrow from a Native American tribe. Believing that the Cheyenne tribe was responsible for the attacks, the young man decides they must leave, and the group continues their journey along the tracks. Hours later, the orphans stop to build a fire so they can spend the night without worrying about the cold. While they rest, Mary hears something approaching through the woods, and upon encountering a coyote, she screams for her brother, who rushes in to attack the wild animal. Soon after, several other coyotes emerge from the darkness, and realizing that Nick is about to be attacked, Mary runs to protect him. At the same time, Spark bites one of the animals to drive it away from her owner, and realizing they're cornered, Tom yells for his sister to run toward the platform. To distract all those predators, the young man runs away with his torch, and is chased by Spark, who decides to help him. In a few seconds, Tom is surrounded by the coyotes, and he thinks about what to do while Mary reaches the platform with Nick. To help the boy, Spark bites one of the animal's paws and growls to keep them away from his friend. Realizing that the pair is now safe, Tom holds Spark in his arms. But one of the coyotes snatches his torch, and he is forced to run to keep them from being devoured. Upon seeing her brother running toward them, Mary begins to speed up with the platform, but even after reuniting with the pair, Tom is surprised by one of the predators. Amid the chaos, Nick's wheelchair starts rolling toward the levers, and Tom grabs his friend to keep him from being hit by the mechanism. Immediately afterward, a curve causes the platform to rise, and the siblings come together to prevent Nick from falling onto the road. The problem is that the impact ends up injuring Tom, and while the boy falls incapacitated, Mary is surrounded by the predator. Realizing his friend is in danger, Nick starts making a noise with his mouth and manages to catch the coyote's attention. Before it can attack him, the coyote is struck by the platform's mechanism. Thanks to this, the trio manages to escape the ambush, and Mary thanks her friend for his incredible act of courage. Soon after, the young woman hugs her brother for saving them, and the young people travel until dawn, when they stop to get some water from the river. However, the siblings end up being surrounded by a group of natives from the Cheyenne tribe, who take them to their village. Realizing that the tribe members are going to separate them, Tom promises he'll find his sister, and Mary is taken to one of the tents with Nick. Within seconds, the tribal chief appears on the scene, and trying to communicate, the girl explains what happened using a few key words. At that moment, it is revealed that the leader knows the young people's language, and he is able to communicate with her normally. At the same time, Tom appears, having recovered from his injury, saying that those people treated him and welcomed him very warmly. The chief then explains that they were not responsible for the attack on the train, but rather a gang of bandits. Realizing that the passengers might be in danger, Tom insists they need to rescue them, but the old man asks them to rest, since they won't be able to go anywhere with the boy's leg in that condition. Finally, the chief introduces himself as Yellow Wolf, the leader of the Cheyenne tribes, and at that moment, a young Native American girl appears playing with her buffalo calf, startling everyone in the tent. Quickly, the old man tells her to behave and introduces her as Red Moon, his granddaughter. Upon seeing the girl, Tom falls in love instantly, but before he can interact with her, the young man is knocked over by the baby buffalo, leaving him embarrassed. The next day, Moon goes to the tent to wake the trio, saying she wants to take them to participate in some activities. So, the group spends the day with the Native American girl, where they learn to shoot a bow and arrow, ride horses, and various other things. In addition, the trio of orphans show the Cheyenne their city games, and the Cheyenne learn to play ball with them. At the end of the day, Wolf receives a warning about the arrival of more outsiders in the region, and realizing that it is time for the young people to leave, the tribal chief meets with them. The orphans then thank them for all the amazing things they've taught them, and so they can call on them if they need help. The old man gives Nick his tribal whistle. Then, as they walk away from the natives, the young people run into the train bandits, but they don't know who they are and believe the men are just ordinary passengers. Realizing that these are the orphans who escaped the robbery minutes before everything happened, the leader begins to lie, saying that the other passengers have gone to a safe place. Furthermore, the men claim they were being attacked by the Cheyenne people, but Mary doesn't believe this and explains that the natives are very kind and welcoming. Meanwhile, the bandits tell the trio to follow them to where the other passengers are, to prove they're telling the truth, and Spark is the only one who senses the men's evil intentions. After a long journey, the group arrives at a mining area, and the trio realizes that the passengers have been taken prisoner to work on the criminals' territory. Although they've figured out what's going on, it's already too late, and the orphans are quickly overpowered by the bandits, who declare that they'll have to work for them, or else they'll be eliminated. At the same time, Spark jumps out of Mary's arms and runs away, leaving the girl confused. Realizing that Nick cannot move, the bandit leader orders his henchmen to get rid of him, but Mary asks them not to do so and explains that the boy can help her with her tasks. So, the men allow Nick to stay with them, and say that if he can't help, he'll be eliminated on the spot. Meanwhile, Spark runs to the top of the mountainous area and sets out to find help for his friends. At the mining site, the young people are found by Eleanor, who is extremely relieved to know they are safe. However, during their conversation, one of the bandits approaches them and decides to punish Tom, who ends up falling to the ground. Quickly, the woman steps in to defend the boy, and before the criminal can use his whip, he is stopped by one of the passengers, who is knocked down and attacked by the madman. Angered, the leader fires a shot into the air and orders his henchmen to take the man to the dungeon as punishment. Later, while the prisoners are released to rest, Spark sets out in search of help. During his walk, the little dog comes across a fort in the middle of the desert and gets excited, but before he can get close, he is startled by a coyote and has to run away. The next day, the orphans and the other passengers continue their work under the worst possible conditions, and during their shifts, Mary and Nick come across a bush full of wild berries. At that moment, the girl remembers that she learned about those fruits from the Cheyenne people, who said they cause terrible stomach pains, so they decide not to pick them. Soon after, one of the bandits asks the pair to bring water to the leader, who is in one of the towers. However, upon arriving there, the orphans overhear the man talking to his henchmen, saying he will eliminate all those people once the mining is finished. This news sends the siblings into a panic, and they decide to warn the prisoners, saying they need to come up with an escape plan. Nick then reminds his friend that they received the whistle from the Cheyenne leader, and Mary explains that they can use the poisonous berries to distract the bandits, while they'll use the whistle to call for help from the natives. Shortly after, everyone lies down to rest, but Mary can't sleep, and Tom decides to play a song for her. The boy's skill on the violin soon catches everyone's attention in the shed, and one of the men says that this was his brother's favorite song. Upon hearing this, the orphans explain that their father looked just like him, and Mary shows the photo they received from their grandmother. As soon as he looks at the photograph, the prisoner reveals that he remembers that day, for it was when his brother took him to the train for the first time. Realizing that he is none other than their Uncle Newman, the children embrace the man, who reveals that he ended up being captured during a robbery on another train, which is why he wasn't able to meet them at the port. The next day, Mary and Nick crush some of the poisonous fruit into the bandits' buckets of water and hand them out. Immediately afterward, the girl signals for Newman to proceed with the plan, and the man uses his pickaxe to destroy one of the mine's pillars, shouting that an avalanche has started. Upon hearing the screams, the bandits gather around their leader, but at that moment, the effects of the fruit begin to take hold, and dozens of criminals rush desperately toward the restrooms. Taking advantage of the distraction, the engineer swaps out the cart of rocks being carried by the cable car, replacing it with an empty one. Thanks to this, the trio of young people manage to climb into the cart in time, and receive help from Eleanor, who knocks one of the bandits down with a shovel, preventing Tom from being left behind. Now that they're heading toward the exit, the young people hold on tight so they don't fall off the cart, and quickly, the bandits try to chase them. To avoid being caught, Tom accelerates the vehicle even more, and after causing one of the criminals to fall off the cliff, he uses Nick's wheelchair, allowing them to gain even more speed. Soon after, Newman appears to fight the remaining criminals and manages to knock them out, but he ends up being attacked by a thug who tries to immobilize him. At the same time, Tom pulls the lever to divert the cart's path, and his uncle does the same, so the criminal can't chase them. Thus, the young people successfully escape the mining area, and Newman ends up getting knocked out by a blow to the head. As the hours pass, the orphans walk through the scorching desert in search of help, and Nick continues to blow the Cheyenne whistle, but no one seems to hear them. However, just as they were about to give up from exhaustion, The trio is surprised by Spark. Soon after, a group of police officers appears from one side of the mountain, and Mary is overjoyed to learn that the little dog managed to find help. At that moment, the Cheyenne tribe appears on the other side of the mountain, and before a conflict can begin, Mary shouts for everyone to calm down and explains that the natives were the ones who helped them when they were lost. Realizing that these people pose no threat, the police lower their weapons, and the young people gather with all the adults to devise a plan to rescue the prisoners. The police chief then explains that they don't know how they could enter the criminals' territory, since any suspicious movement would cause them to detonate their dynamite. Upon hearing this, Wolf states that he can enter with his men, as they wouldn't need weapons to storm the place. So, while the henchmen scatter dynamite around the mine, the natives knock out the guards in the towers by throwing rocks at their heads. Immediately afterward, the Cheyennes open the gates for the other warriors to enter, but the bandits manage to stop the invasion and separate the police from the natives. Because of this, Wolf and his warriors are forced to confront the criminals on their own, while Tom and Mary rush to save the prisoners alongside Moon, leaving Nick in a safe place. In order to open the dungeon cell, the trio tries to steal the key from the thug, but even after managing to grab it, Moon drops the key, causing the man to retrieve it. So, the young people band together to attack him alongside Spark, and after a brief fight, they manage to recover all the keys. Quickly, Tom and Mary set off to open the cage, but upon seeing that Wolf is being attacked, Moon runs to help him, while Spark heads in another direction. As soon as he frees the prisoners, Tom notices that his sister is gone, and at that moment, Spark appears at the top of the mountain with the group of police officers, who found a way through the mines. Thanks to this, Lobo and the other natives receive help from the officers, allowing the bandits to be easily subdued. Meanwhile, Newman notices that the criminals' leader has captured Mary, and Nick becomes desperate, thinking of a way to help his friend. Determined to sacrifice himself for her, the young man uses all his strength to send his wheelchair rolling down the slope, and taking advantage of the thug's distraction, Mary steps on his foot, allowing Nick to hit the man squarely. Thanks to this, the leader ends up crashing into the wagon, which causes him to be buried under the sacks of gold nuggets. The problem is that Nick seems to have lost his strength after the impact, and in desperation, Mary and Newman beg him to fight for his life. At that moment, Nick sees the buffalo in front of him, and remembering Mary's words, he struggles to move and strokes the animal's face. This brings the boy back to consciousness, and relieved, the girl hugs her friend, grateful that he is still alive. Finally, Lobo gives his tribal hat to Nick, saying that even though the boy is small, his heart is the size of a buffalo. Excited, everyone celebrates their victory over the criminals, and days later, Eleanor says goodbye to her co-worker at the orphanage, as she is about to start a new life with Newman. In addition, the couple decides to adopt Nick as their fifth family member, and realizing that he will finally be surrounded by people who love him, the boy accepts the idea. Excited, the children hug each other, along with Spark, now setting off for a new life. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.